have studied about the local and the vernacular names in the previous slide. We know that local names and the vernacular names to be avoided to avoid the confusion about the living organisms. Hence, to avoid these confusions, the biologists have established the procedure to assign the scientific name to living organisms, and that scientific names are acceptable all over the world based on some of the principles and criteria which are provided by ICBN and ICZN. The scientific names are assigned for the living organisms which is acceptable all over the world, throughout the world, based on some of the principles and criteria to avoid the confusion. And who is doing that? That is done by ICBN and ICZN. ICBN, it stands for International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, that is ICBN, where all different types of plants, starting from the lower level of plants to the higher level of plants, all are named scientifically here, that is under ICBN. When we take and talk about ICZN, it is International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. Here all varieties of living animals, starting from the unicellular to the highly evolved multicellular organism, all the animals are named under ICZN, International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. Therefore, biologists have accepted binomial nomenclature. It's very clear, binomial nomenclature. Nomenclature means naming of the living organism. Binomial nomenclature means bi, it stands for two. Nomial means names. That means two names are used for naming of the living organisms, and that we call it as binomial nomenclature. That includes two names, as I repeated before, such as the first name is called as genus name and the second name is called as the species name. We said here binomial nomenclature. Bi means two, nomial means names. We are taking two names. Two names are included during naming of the living organism. The first name is called as genus name and the second name is called as species name or the specific epithet. Species name can also be called as specific epithet, in which the first name represents the genus name. Genus name, it represents the first name and the second name represents the species name. Binomial nomenclature was first proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. Binomial nomenclature was proposed by Carolus Linnaeus, and now we shall see about the definition of binomial nomenclature. It's very clear. In previous slide itself we studied about the definition of the binomial nomenclature. We shall say in a scientific way, that is, binomial nomenclature is the scientific method of naming of living organism by using two components or two names such that the first name refers to genus and the second name refers to species name. This process is called as binomial nomenclature. Very simple and clear. Binomial. Bi means two, nomial means names, and nomenclature means naming of the living organism. Let us say the definition now. Binomial nomenclature means naming of a living organism by using two components or two names such that the first name is generic name and the second name is the specific epithet, and that is referred as binomial nomenclature. Let us see the simple example now. Mango. The scientific name of mango is Mangifera indica. Mangifera indica is the scientific name of the mango. Mangifera is the generic name. Indica is the species name. This is how the binomial nomenclature is given to the plants or animals or any organism. And Mangifera indica, it is used throughout the world, and this is a very common scientific name that can be easily recognized for mango. The second simple example which we all know is Homo sapiens, which is used for humans. The scientific name of humans is Homo sapiens. Homo stands for generic name and sapiens is nothing but the specific epithet or the species name. This is about the binomial nomenclature. And next, as we discussed in previous slide, the biologists have made many of the principles and criteria, that is standard principles and criteria for naming of the living organism. They are listed one below the other. Let me go through it. Rules of nomenclature. Nomenclature means naming. There are various rules for naming of the organisms. Let me know one by one. The first rule is the scientific names are generally in Latin language, or the names are taken from the Latin. The second principle or the second rule is scientific name of the organism must contain two names. We called before itself binomial nomenclature. We are using two names. Which are those two names? Such as genus name as well as the species name. And the third important rule is the first letter of the genus name. The first letter of the genus name should start with a capital letter, and the species name should start with the small letter. We can still tell in a very simple way, that is, the first letter of the genus name should start with the capital letter. The remaining all the letters can be in a small letters. That is what the third rule says. The fourth rule is scientific names should be written in italics. When they are in the printed form, they should be in italic form. They should be in italic style. And when they are handwritten, they should be separately underlined. This is the another important rule which comes under nomenclature. And the fifth one is the name of the author should be written in an abbreviation. We shall take the example so that we can easily understand. Mangifera indica Lin. We have mentioned Mangifera indica. You are observing here the third rule, that is, fourth rule. The scientific name, Mangifera indica is the scientific name. It should be written in italics when printed. This is in a printed form, so the name is indicated in an italic style. And the last rule is the name of the author should be written in an abbreviation. That means this name, that is Mandifera indica, was given by Linnaeus, and hence his name is in abbreviation as Mangifera indica Linn. What does it indicate? It indicates that this species name, that means Mangifera indica, this species was first described by Linnaeus. That is what this rule states. That means this name was given by, or that was described by Linnaeus, and hence his first letters of his names are in abbreviated form. Mangifera indica Linn is the scientific name of mango. I am repeating the rules of nomenclature again. The first rule is the name should be from Latin language. The second rule is there should be two names, and among the two names, first name should be of genus name, second name should be species name. Third rule is genus name should start with capital letter and species name should start with the small letter. Fourth rule is the scientific name should be written in italic style, that means slanted. It should be in italic style when they are in printed form, and they should be separately underlined when they are in handwritten form. So this is the fourth rule. Last rule is the author name should be written in an abbreviation. Example we have taken Mangifera indica Linn. What does this Linn states or indicates? It indicates that this species name was first described by Linnaeus. Next concept is classification. Classifying means what? Classification is a process where the living organisms are grouped into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters, and that we call it as classification. In a very simple way, we can say that classification is nothing but grouping of what? Grouping of the living organism based on some of the similar observable characters, and that we call it as classification. We call it as classification. The process where the organisms are grouped into convenient categories based on some of the observable characters, similar observable characters. The scientific term for each category or rank, we call it as taxon. Most important thing, the scientific term. We are using a general term to make you understand, that is groups. Grouping of organism is classification, and that individual group of organisms are called as taxon. Group of organisms which are classified, and that groups are called by the scientific name or scientific term, that we call it as taxon. And many such categories are called as taxa. Taxa is nothing but plural. I will give you an example. This is a group of organism. Here this is a group of organism. This is a group of organism. This is a group of organism. That means we are grouping the organisms based on some of the easily observable characters. Let me give you an example to understand the concept. These are the different groups. There are 4 groups. Now, let us take it as an example. And each group is called as using the word taxon. Each group which are classified the organisms into groups, and each group is called as taxon. There are different taxon. All together in plural we call it as taxa. Single groups are called as taxon. Many such categories, many such taxa in plural we are calling it as taxa. Singular is taxon. Single group which is classified we call it as taxon. Altogether many such categories are called as taxa. Taxa is a plural word. Taxon is a singular word which is used for the single group. Next we shall see about taxonomy. We shall discuss now about taxonomy. What is taxonomy? Living organisms are classified into different taxa. I have told you in previous slide itself, taxa is nothing but groups, but we are using the scientific word as taxa for the groups. Taxonomy is the living organisms are classified into different groups, and this process is called as taxonomy. Taxonomy is nothing but the process of grouping of living organism into taxa, and that we call it as, that process we call it as taxonomy. The study of diversity of living organisms based on comparative and evolutionary things, that is very difficult. So to make our study easier, there is a need of taxonomy. There is a need of grouping of organisms, and that is most important and makes the study easier, as well as the evolutionary concepts. So that is what shows the relationships. We call it as systematics. The study of diversities of all the living organisms. There are diversity of living organisms. Millions of different species are there. Studying of all those diversity of all the living organisms based on comparative and evolutionary relationships, and that we call it as systematics. The word systematics is derived from the Latin word systema. Systematics is derived from the Latin word systema, which means, systema means systematic arrangement of living organisms. That is a Latin word. Systema is a Latin word. From where we have taken systematics means we have taken from the Latin word. We have taken from the Latin word, and that Latin word is nothing but systema. What is the meaning of systema? Systema means systematic arrangement of living organisms, and that is what we call it as systema. From systema we have made a word as systematics. This word was first used by Carolus Linnaeus in his publications, that is Systema Naturae. Systema Naturae is a book written by Carolus Linnaeus, and Linnaeus used the word systema. He is the first person who used the word systema, and he used that word in his book called as Systema Naturae. This is about classification